What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. I'm your host, Coach Adam, here with Coach Damon today. Just going a little 1v1. We're going to be discussing bodybuilding, conventional bodybuilding versus functional strength training, kind of realistic goals, what you should really be asking yourself as far as what you want to get out of your training, and kind of break down some pros and cons for you. Obviously, we are on the pro side of the functional strength training. We'll get a little bit into that. But before we do that, as always, we've got a member of the week, and this week, Mr. Dick Crab.
Legend.
Legendary guy. Why don't you, I'll let you take it away. You see him all the time.
Yeah, so typically a 9 o'clock guy. He's been going through a lot. I mean, he has AFib, but that has never stopped him from trying to get after it in the gym. And he loves to golf, and he's just been logging all of his weights in and been seeing a lot of improvements with his lifts, as well as just being able, even with his cardiovascular system, with the limitation of the AFib, he's been able to get through it quite well.
Knows how to manage it really well. So that's always, obviously, it's a serious thing, but he knows how to manage it super well. So just kind of trying to proceed with caution and not skip a beat, literally. All right. So nice job, Dick. Moving on. So intro. When we are looking into conventional bodybuilding versus functional strength training, really we got to ask, are you trying to train like a bodybuilder? You know, everybody knows what a bodybuilder looks like. Or are we trying to focus on being a little bit more of like a functional athlete, if you will, for lack of a better term? So comparing the two training styles, just to clarify it here up front, when we look at bodybuilding, it is focusing on maximizing muscle size and symmetry, right? We see this a lot with shows and things like that. It is primarily aesthetic driven. So how you look is what matters when it comes to bodybuilding. And it uses a lot of isolation exercises and machine work to promote this kind of like the kind of lifting where essentially you're working isolated muscle groups, trying to maximize size without the other factors like coordination, balance, all these other things that functional strength does include. So functional strength is going to focus on improving your movement quality. So yes, we still have the mentality of adding as much muscle as possible, you know, losing body fat, but we're going to do it with movement quality in mind, strength, stability, and essentially having that pour over into your real life everyday performance. Right. A lot of this we see in multi-joint movements. So we want to be constantly challenging our coordination and balance because that's really what's going to matter in the long run when it comes to longevity. So those are kind of what each one is about in a nutshell. But we'll go ahead and get a little bit more into it here as far as why don't we get into the structure of how each one kind of typical characteristics maybe of bodybuilding versus functional strength. You want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, for bodybuilding, you're going to be more into the upper lower splits.
Yeah.
You know, really isolating certain muscles, such as if you wanted to have like a chest day, a leg day, back day, and you're still going to be incorporating the accessories still, like curls, triceps, rear delts, all that stuff is going to be included for their workouts, but their main goals is to isolate certain areas. So, for example, like their chest day, they might do, for us, we would usually have like bench press, and then maybe that would probably be one of the few chest movements we would have.
That's like it's like the primary movement.
Mm-hmm.
There's other movements that we do in a workout that are going to hit your chest, but not like solely.
Yeah, not solely, exactly.
Yeah.
So, for example, after, let's say, both you and a bodybuilder did bench press, right after that, we might have you do a single arm pull down or a single arm row to go with that to counterbalance it.
Yeah.
For them, they're going to go straight into probably a machine
Yeah.
and not even superset. They'll probably go bench press for 5 sets and doing a lot of reps, going 12, 10, 8, 6 and that hypertrophy standpoint. And then followed by that, they'll go on to the next exercise where it could be an incline fly with the machine. That could be a second exercise that they would go on top of, and just trying to hit different areas of where they can get the movement of the chest versus just the whole broader term of the chest.
Yeah, I think that kind of build off of that, they look at typically it's like, what is the primary muscle group that I'm trying to hit? Workouts are structured around muscle groups, not so much thinking about the secondary or even like the tertiary muscles that are involved, which oftentimes are like your stabilizing muscles and things that, we can start to get into like balance and coordination, not really the focus there.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd say the biggest focus for bodybuilders is to try to get to that muscles fatigue point
Yeah.
and try to break through that fatigue.
Yeah. The basically seeking the fatigue, seeking the pump, right?
Mhm.
So they're training their muscles to work individually, basically. So when we look at functional strength in contrast to that, we're looking at like a full body or movement patterns we're basing the workout off of movement patterns and not muscle groups. So like you were just saying with the bench, for example, like in our head, we're nerds with it, right? So we're like, okay, we got a two arm or a bilateral horizontal press. So we're gonna need a unilateral or a single sided overhead press. Like, right, we're still pushing with the upper body, but we're trying to cover multiple areas of movement, multiple planes. Multiplanar movement is very important. We've talked about it before. You got three planes of movement in your body: sagittal, frontal, and transverse. So we want to make sure we're rotating, make
Mhm.
sure we're moving side to side, front to back. Things that are often limited with machines, right? Machines typically keep you in a single plane of motion most of the time. So you see a lot of this multiplanar movement in compound lifts. So we always like talk about here on the floor, prioritize your compounds. You're always going to see them early in your workout. So essentially the energy demand is the highest. So we're trying to put as much into them as we can, and kind of everything that comes after that, we're still getting work done, but it's like it's that secondary, tertiary kind of
Mhm.
it's there things are happening, but the main priority has kind of already happened, right?
Absolutely. And then you just add on to that, let's just say the superset of the bench press, you're going to be starting to work on the stabilizers to
Yeah,
help improve it even more throughout the sets that you're going on into the bench press.
right. So that's kind of, and then I guess the best way to put it would be like functional strength is you're trying to train your muscles to all work together. Like I guess that's like you can either isolate with bodybuilding or you can train your muscles to all work in symmetry together, and that's what translates to everyday movements more often than not. So, um, looking at kind of like muscle growth, how exactly do each of these forms um, of exercise contribute to building muscle? When we look at bodybuilding, they're trying to maximize hypertrophy almost all the time, right? So there isn't really fluctuation in set and rep counts too often, which is contrary to what we try to instill here with our lift cycle and functional strength is, every few weeks, depending on what cycle it is, we're changing the set and rep scheme because we're working on something different, right? There's a different micro goal that goes into the macro goal of a full cycle. And there isn't really a lot of variation when it comes to bodybuilding. So a lot of times just trying to max the hypertrophy, it's easy to seek that progressive overload in that kind of structure. You said like that 12, 10, 8, 6 kind of descending rep count, but you've got the opportunity to add weight there because it's just built to do that. We see a lot of greater volume, and like they're trying to stress the muscle, right? In the bodybuilding mentality. So we are currently in an endurance phase, so it's high volume, and we are in upper and lower splits, but like we're only doing 2 weeks of it, right? So we're giving you a dose, trying to tap into that muscle fatigue and that stress, that trying to get you to push through that,
Mhm.
but not for an extended period of time. Because then in 2 weeks, we're going to ask you to then go to a 12, 10, 8, 6 and use this like metabolic engine that you've basically built up
Mhm.
over these weeks to try to then, optimize your hypertrophy.
Yeah, and then it moves on to strength after that as well, because we're going through that progressive overload, trying to make sure the body can adapt through each phase that we're trying to accomplish
Right.
as well.
Right. So when you're looking at bodybuilding and you have all these isolation movements and stuff like that, it's good for volume and targeting muscle fatigue, like we've talked about. Um, it does help with bringing up like lagging body parts, right? So maybe you're coming back from an injury, or you jump on an in body and something tells you that your left arm is 2 pounds, 3 pounds heavier than your right arm, whatever. Because the movements are so isolated, it does make it easier to at least focus in or dial in on that and trying to bring that symmetry about, but in a very isolated way, right? You don't want to, it takes a lot of time and effort and focus to do that. And you want to look a little bit more full picture when it comes to function. It's like, yes, this, maybe my left arm is smaller or whatever it is, but I want to bring it up a little bit more symmetrically with my body as far as how does it fit into movement patterns that are, that I see in like a compound movement or something like that. So the difference, or the point of difference between the two is how your muscle is trained and how it's then utilized, is like kind of the line in the sand between the two, between the bodybuilding and the functional strength. Um, so touched on it already a little bit, but functional strength, the benefits are obviously going to be a little bit more about the balance, the coordination. Rotational power is a big thing that we tap into here.
Especially with all the golfers that we have.
Yeah. All the golfers here always want to try to improve rotational power to some degree. So I think that rotational power helps translate to also trying to teach people intensity, like intensity level, right? We've got some people that come in, maybe they've done Pilates, maybe they've done other forms of exercise that, yes, are exercise, but it hasn't pushed them to a certain intensity level. Like maybe they've reached like a 6 out of 10 or something like that in their Pilates class. But like, I want you to be at like an 8 or 9 out of 10 when you're working with us for 60 minutes, right? Strangely, rotational power, I feel like, unlocks the door for a lot of people. It's like, I want you to throw this med ball into the wall as fast. Like if you break it, like I'm like good, right?
I'll pay you.
I'll pay you to break it.
To break this brick wall.
Yeah. Quote from Damon. Damon will pay for your broken med ball out of pocket. But I think learning how to crank it up like that in like a very simple, like a med ball scoop toss or something like just your body seeing that you can produce force at a quick rate, right? Is it can translate into the rest of your lifts or the rest of your exercises with like the concentric part of a movement.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I mean, comparing it to at least bodybuilding is a much more slower, more eccentric, trying to lengthen, slow everything down versus functional. Yes, we still work on the eccentric lifts, but we're still also wanting to work on firing the muscles as fast as we can at certain times. So I would say it's huge to be able to focus on that stuff, because it's vice versa with an athlete that's always known how to move fast, and you try to tell them to slow down, versus trying to tell a bodybuilder that's all he's known is to be slow, move, feel all the tension, take 4 seconds to complete 1 rep. Try to tell him to do a power clean or a rotational scoop toss. I mean, it would be a lot different for his muscles because they're not used to it.
For sure. Yeah, it's a good example. So, it's with the bodybuilding, strong muscles don't always translate to efficient movement quality, right? And that's really long term, especially like for our demographic here, and probably should be for the vast majority of people, is you're trying to continue to move efficiently for as long as you can, right? So that's that strong muscle, how you use it, not necessarily how big or how good it can look, is kind of like the mentality there. So I think what you mentioned this actually off air before we started is bodybuilders are now starting to incorporate a little bit more mobility and like flexibility, maybe some functional exercises here or there, because of course, there's an injury risk that comes with all exercise, but especially with isolation and chasing that pump or chasing that fatigue, you know, everyone's got a line where it's like if they pass it, like you're now in this a high risk of an injury threshold, and being able to incorporate mobility, and that really we use mobility and myofascial release, so like foam rolling or lacrosse ball trigger pointing and stuff like that, as our clients rest
Mhm.
basically. Like we want you to take effective rest, but being able to roll out, lacrosse ball trigger point, specific muscle groups that we're working, you're catching your breath and you're getting your rest, but still being time efficient. We're working on trying to improve mobility, or maybe you're tight in a spot that you got to turn around and then, use in the next set. That is a good way that we like to incorporate it, because let's be honest, we crank through our warm up in under 5 minutes, right? Like
Mhm.
you and me, if we go and warm up before a workout, we're warming up for longer than 5 minutes. Like
Yeah.
it's tough when I like watch like our members to, warming up that quickly, not super ideal, right? Normally we'd want to take longer. We're trying to get their heart rate elevated, blood pumping, we'll address the muscle groups that we're going to use that day, but really to see increases in or progress in mobility and flexibility, you got to dedicate time to it.
Absolutely. And it's like we understand too that our clients might not be able to have as much time as him and I have when it comes to taking care of our bodies. I mean, it's
Yeah.
literally our job to
Yeah,
make
we're in a
sure
gym all day.
to be a good example, but at the same time too, you got to be able to use that time efficiently, right?
Yeah.
You have the first 10 minutes to get this workout, to get not the workout, excuse me, the warm up in to efficiently do what you need to do. And some clients, at least some of our new clients that are just getting into it, are really taking that to heart and
Yeah.
have been doing really well with that. I mean, a good example, I mean, Dick's honestly one of them. He shows up 10 minutes early
Yeah,
to
he's
get a
always early.
couple of his warm ups in, as well as a couple other clients that I know that are really good with that. And I honestly couldn't tell you the one time any of them have really gotten injured
Yeah.
because of the amount of time they take care of themselves, except for one. But I mean, he has our past history injuries anyways, but that's just, you got to work with what you got, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I think it's a good thing that, we're trying to push it on people to incorporate that into your workout or beforehand, flexibility, mobility, and that's kind of what is, I guess, being realized in the bodybuilding world a little bit more now, is those are important things that you can't just neglect if you want to try to continue to perform, right? Or
Mhm.
continue to train at the intensity that you want to, injury free.
I mean, could
So,
you think of examples of past bodybuilders that weren't in that structure of mobility that have got kicked in the butt later on in the years?
I mean, yeah, a lot of time, like you have to assume like you're not gonna look like that forever, right? It's a very
Mhm.
short window and an opportunity that you have to like capitalize on that physique. So training is has to change over time to become more functional, because priorities need to change, right? Just physiologically, our bodies can't maintain that kind of structure for that long. So
Mhm.
I was actually just joking with somebody. I was doing a stretch with somebody earlier this morning. I just saw a video of Arnold yesterday, and this dude's, well, he's got to be in his 70s, I think. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, for those who don't know. um, so he's walking through like a normal doorway. You take your normal doorway, and he like sticks his arms out to the side and like acts like he like can't fit. Right? He's like running into the door frame, and then he like backs up and turns sideways and like slides himself through sideways, because he's always had that like bodybuilder mentality of like trying to get huge, things like that. But I bet, you go and you look at his workouts now, there's no chance he's not putting flexibility, mobility in there. It's
Mhm.
it's you know, it's not sustainable
Y
essentially.
Yeah, and I mean, also too, you gotta look at Ronnie Coleman. As great of a bodybuilder he was at the time, and the accomplishments he made were amazing,
Maybe the
but
goat.
how many back surgeries did that guy get? And to see him where he's at now, he's still working out, he's able to figure out how to be functional and still do what he loves, and he had to change that, but he had to change that because of the way bodybuilding treated his body
Yeah,
for
the
the years and
stress.
years and all the injuries that he's gotten because of how hard he lifted and for the amount of years and consistency of doing it and the repeatability.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So just to wrap it up, basically, you got to ask yourself what your realistic goal is, right? You want to try to have a balanced program. So, compound lifts, functional movement patterns, trying to hit as many movement patterns as you can in a workout. Isolation work is good for hypertrophy, but not all the time. You need variation. Unilateral stuff, it's good, but we need to be moving efficiently and have like well-rounded movements. And then throwing in that mobility, stability, flexibility work, that's what's going to give you that longevity or just the ability straight up to continue to do what you like to do. So always ask yourself, what are you training for? And basically just obviously we're behind the functional strength training mentality. That's going to teach you how to use the muscle that you're building in the most effective way possible and affect your everyday life. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there, guys, and we will talk to you next week.